What's up, Chris?
What's going on, Jay?
It
Happy
is
Friday,
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
What day is it?
What are we doing here? That's right. We're changing up the model. We're gonna record these early and then post them for you later, so you can get all of the relevant news, but in a timely, tidy, nice, cute, beautiful little package. Welcome everyone to On the Rocks, the e-commerce hour, but it's not an e-commerce hour anymore. The e-commerce half hour. We'll have to workshop that, Jay. The show where Jay and I talk to you about all things e-commerce, right? If that wasn't clear, I'm Chris. He is Jay, and we're the host of your show. Today we're going to talk about the nice, beautiful, big, relevant, I don't know, current event where our president and some of the folks from China came together to drop a big headline. The U.S. and China have slashed tariffs put into place just a couple months ago on their own without any warning or otherwise issue. But now we're cutting them back, which is nice. And Jay, I think that there are a lot of different things for us to talk about when it comes to that because number one, right now that's a valuable thing if you're sourcing from China, right? Number two, it's not all that valuable if you are bringing in de minimis items because the de minimis threshold exemption.
What's up with that? I would have thought they would have cut that back a little bit.
I don't have any idea, but they didn't, and those are still catching the tariffs. So all your purchases from Shimu or wherever may still have some issues. So why do these things matter to you? And that's what we're here to talk about today. And so first, we've talked about tariffs on the show. I don't know, 1 million times. That's maybe a slight exaggeration, but not that much of one.
At least six to 8 times now.
Right. And yesterday for us, but earlier this week for you, as you're watching the show, the U.S. and China agreed on the U.S. side that we're reducing the tariff from that 145 that was in place down to a much more modest 30% tariff. And then on the Chinese side, they're reducing their tariffs, their outbound tariffs for us, the U.S. outbound of the U.S. From 125 to 10%.
Yeah, so we're reducing 115% across the board for 90 days. So, the thing that we keep talking about is we need some certainty in this. Mm-hmm. And, instead of coming out with a deal or a framework of a deal, we're just going to roll it back for 90 days and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
This comes just days after President Trump saying he's not going to make a deal. He's not going to cut the tariffs. And this also comes before he said, they most likely will go back up. Probably not to 145%, but somewhere between 30 and 145. So with that said, what does it mean for you?
And that's the biggest question. And the answer is unfortunately not a great one, and that's that we just don't know. When in these times of uncertainty, the best that you can do is to have a plan and understand what the different options are, and that will be reiterating some things back that we've talked about before. With respect to that, right? When you're reducing tariffs like this, there are a few just like economic impacts directly, right? U.S. inflation pressures kind of had already started to come down a little bit, but consumer prices are still high. I know a 115% decrease is going to probably help with that because again, you'll have the opportunity to reduce your costs if you had already increased them, or if you were holding out on the hope that something like this would happen, well, then you've been rewarded, and you don't have to do anything with your costs except for potentially increase them a little bit to capture this 30% change.
So I do have a question. So news had been reporting that there were no ships on the ocean that left China, and I don't know if it was what time frame that was, because did everybody that had orders in place that have tariffs that have increased to 145 stopped all the orders? Because I mean,
I don't know.
30% is much more palatable. You can actually adjust your pricing a little bit, eat some of that. You can actually make that work. So, my first question is it time to call my supplier and say, get it out now?
Yeah. And I think that my guess is, and especially if you've been waiting, now's a good time. Jay, I don't remember, and this may just be a nice refresher for everybody, right? The tariffs are paid on this side, right?
Correct.
When the boat gets here. So
Yep.
Typically takes about 30 days. So yeah, if the boats have been waiting, it's go time.
Yeah.
Get that boat on the move, because you have 90 days to catch the 30% rate before we go back to whatever that middle might end up being.
Yeah.
And so that is a strategic decision that you have to make, and one that you'll definitely want to understand the impacts of, for sure.
And, if you really want to look at that and measure the impacts, you could use our landing cost calculator. I will post it up over there for you. Grab that and check out what the pricing impact is on 145 versus 30%. See if you can work that out. See if you need to raise your prices, or what you need to do there. So, check it out. I mean, it might be worth doing it. Maybe, you might still be looking for another supplier in another country.
That's right.
Just up to whatever your plans happen to be at this point.
That's right. And so that landed cost calculator can be a really powerful tool to be able to help you to make that evaluation, because it can help you to understand, like, okay, I'm paying X dollars in China, and I'm going to be subject to this percent tariff, and typically these shipping fees. But if I were to find a supplier instead in Mexico, the tariff is this rate. The cost is maybe 10% more, maybe 15% more, maybe 50% more. And what impact does that have on your final costing, so that you can evaluate both, like, whether it makes sense and what other types of things you can do.
Exactly.
Obviously, if you're a drop shipper or a private label brand, like some of those have been hit really hard. If you're selling through Amazon or other 3PLs, right, the marketplace brands, like those types of things, you're going to have some increasing costs. Those are definitely things that you want to be aware of and be planning for, thoughtful around. And then finally, of course, like, if everybody's calling the supplier and being like, get my stuff on the boat, maybe you'll have some fulfillment delays, or some shipping delays on that side, right, where it takes a little bit longer for your product to get to where you need for it to be. So those are definitely things to think about and things to be thoughtful about going forward.
Yeah. At least start the
Jay,
communications now. At least do that part of it and see where things stand.
Yep. Yeah, and if you haven't already, like, there is definitely some value in at least looking at diversifying your sourcing, right? Like, whether you actually make a change or not isn't the conclusion that you have to reach today, but at least understanding what your options are can be extremely valuable. It looks like a lot of the industry is waiting to see if that de minimis is going to come back, that de minimis threshold. So that could also be a little reason why the ships are hanging out, because there hasn't been any formal negotiation like announced around this.
Right.
But I'm sure there are lots and lots of people with a lot invested in figuring that situation out. Do you have any other thoughts about kind of what happens next, or what people should do in the meantime?
Yeah, I think it's time to dig deep and understand what your risk tolerance is. And, do you want to bet that the tariffs are going to go up, or maybe they're going to go down? So if you're betting they're going to go up, you're going to make your purchases now. If you're betting they're going down, you might wait. And, if I was a betting man, I'm sitting on that 50-50. I don't know which way it's going to go at this point, because the only thing that we can predict is the unpredictability at this point. And it's not worth, holding your hat thinking it's going to go down or go up or whatever it's going to do. You just got to make your mind up and go one way or the other. And, like we've talked about, we're heading into June and July. So, we're heading towards Prime Days. So you got to have your product in for that. And if you're planning on placing purchase orders for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that time is coming soon. So you're going to have to make up your mind and make your decisions soon. So at least, put a risk tolerance model together, figure out where you want it, where you stand there, and, hope for the best.
And unfortunately, Jay, that is kind of where we're stuck at here. In times of uncertainty like this, it can just be really difficult to come up with a good solid, unchanging strategic plan. That's exactly the advice that I think that we'd give, is that understand it's going to change. The true answer is that within 90 days, we're almost certain to see some kind of different tariff rate, and particularly with China. And if that's the case, then that means you don't know what it's going to be until we get there.
Yeah.
I was listening to a different show that talked about how a lot of times these international trade deals can take years to truly negotiate. And so imagining that we're going to come to a final conclusion in 90 days is unrealistic for sure. Although maybe we come to a where we are for now and for the short period. But I doubt that I'm certain that we'll see more carve outs. We'll see more small changes. We'll see other areas where maybe things will be higher or lower depending on a lot of different factors. And Jay, I personally think it's pretty funny because if that's true, that would have been exactly what I advised at the very beginning. Hey, if you're going to roll out a tariff strategy, be thoughtful and considerate about it, and do enough research to understand exactly what you're trying to incentivize. But it'll be nice, I think, if we get there in the conclusion, if that is what ends up happening. So
yeah. And if we go back, a week or so, we didn't discuss this, but there was a framework of a deal made with the UK, and did we discuss that?
Yeah.
So
we didn't talk about it. It didn't seem like that big a deal, Jay.
Right. As far as e-commerce sellers and e-commerce purchasers, unless you were buying a Range Rover online, it wasn't making an impact. So, the only thing that really was rolled back was the tariffs on the expensive cars from the UK, and opened up the beef market from the US to the UK. So, that framework was put in place rather quickly. But, this China tariff situation is a little more sticky. So, we'll have to give it a little bit more time.
I think so. But it is nice, again, as a supplier, now you at least know that maybe your business doesn't need to close. I know that I'd seen over the past 3 weeks or so, leading into Mother's Day, as I was doing looking at a lot of different potential options for my wife. There were going out of business sales and that kind of thing, because and every one of them read hey, we're facing the pressure from higher tariffs, and so we've made the decision to close our stores. And maybe they got me, right? Maybe this was a good sob story to get me to look at their product, and they'll still be around for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's really the true decision that they made, of just, you know what, we can't have to do this anymore, because at 145% tariff, we can't make any money. And there are lots of companies that needed to make that decision. So at least now that 30%, like Jay mentioned before, is a little bit more palatable. You can absorb that a little easier. But if you were already considering shutting down or making some other type of change, this is just a reminder that there is a lot of uncertainty, and maybe it won't be as bad as it is forever. But certainly one where you need to have a good plan. What else do you think, Jay? Any that feels like the best advice, right? Make sure you have a good plan to be adaptable,
Yeah.
to be ready for change, because there's just no question that that's what's coming.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's kind of like what we started to say from the start of this. It's like
Yeah,
be agile, be able to pivot, be able to figure out where the best sources are, where the best tariff rates for your situation are, and try to find new suppliers in that situation that work best for you and your company, and ultimately for your customer.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's the other thing. We talked about the e-commerce sellers having uncertainty. The American buyer is still not settled.
yeah,
The market rose yesterday 1,100 points, but there's still anxiety over pricing and what's going to
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
And and like I said, the only thing we can predict is unpredictability, and that's it, man. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and like you mentioned, right? So there's a lot of this anxiety, which means that like consumers are delaying purchases. People are uncertain about what kind of purchases they even want to make, whether they'll make them at all. And so that does result in the Mother's Day push for the people who are going out of business. Like that kind of thing happens because of those things, right?
yeah,
And if your customers are just not are going to be more hesitant to make purchases, like that's just that's just another, like you said, Jay, that's just another layer of uncertainty that we have to continue to manage. So
yep,
um, be aware that it's uncertain times out there, and you never you can't make a perfect plan, but you know that you can plan for some level of uncertainty, and so that's exactly what we'd recommend that you do. Jay, any final thoughts today, or any other topics related to this update for tariffs that we should be talking about today?
I think we've covered this latest hit here pretty well. But what I want to know is what y'all out there are doing. Have you experienced the price increase on any of your products? Have you received goods that were priced at the 145% tariff rate?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are your plans? What have you decided moving forward you were going to do? Just drop a note down in the comments and let us know, because we truly want to know. And we'll have the next step in this as soon as that news story gets released. We'll pop on out there and be glad to have this discussion all over again. Hopefully, it's talking about lower tariff rates. But you know what? We are ready for anything.
Absolutely, and you should be too. So again, just a few key takeaways if it wasn't clear already. Key takeaway number one: run your landed cost calculations immediately. Use Hyrox landed cost calculator to do that. It's over there, over there. Wait, no, that way. No, this way. That way? No, I don't know.
Check over Chris's
Use
head.
Yeah, wherever it comes up, use the landed cost calculator tool. And then if you haven't already, if you haven't started the process of evaluating and making sure you understand your options as it comes to suppliers, now is the time to make sure that you've done that. So review your suppliers, make sure that that you're getting in the best situation that you can, and that you're taking advantage of opportunities that may be in the marketplace right now. So do all of those things without thinking twice. And then, of course, like Jay mentioned, come back right here. The next wild thing that happens, Jay and I will be here to talk about it. We know there's uncertainty. We know there's wild things going on. I made a reference to the one big beautiful bill. There's some tax stuff that's potentially going to go live in the next couple weeks for sure. That's I think, Jay, is going to be the title of the bill, maybe, at least according to this preliminary version. So we'll be here to talk about how those tax impacts can impact e-commerce sellers as well. So stay tuned to the e-commerce hour, and we'll be here to make sure that you're taken care of the whole way. What else, Jay? Anything more?
That's it. Have a great week, everybody.
Right. Have a great week, everybody. I'm Chris. He's Jay. This was the e-commerce hour. See you next week.
See you, everybody.